I no longer remember the color of the sky over Medusa. In my memory, it is always gray, the same shade as gunmetal and old bones. They said the storms there could strip the flesh from a man in minutes. Perhaps that was why we learned early that the flesh is weak. Perhaps that was the first lie we ever believed. I was forged in the anvil halls beneath the iron mountains. The air there was thick with the scent of oil and ozone, the music of forges ringing like hymns. I remember the heat on my face, the sting of sparks against bare skin. Those sensations are gone now, replaced by readouts, temperature gauges, and binary prayers that hum somewhere behind my eyes. 10,000 years. That is what the Rexturds say. I have survived longer than some empires lasted, longer than the stars of my youth have burned. I have fought on 1,000 worlds, beneath suns of every color, under skies filled with the smoke of our victories and the ash of our failures. I've been reforged, repaired, and replaced until there was nothing left that was born of woman. Only steel, memory, and duty. At first, the augmentation felt like ascension. Each new limb stronger, faster. Each sensory array sharper than mortal eyes or ears could ever be. I told myself that I was being perfected, made closer to the machine god. But perfection is a lie told to keep us moving forward. What we become is not divine, it is hollow. Every upgrade removes a memory. Every replacement severs a feeling. Until one day you look down at the metal hands that used to be yours and realize you cannot remember the warmth of another's touch or the pain of a wound that bled. I remember one battle more clearly than most. A barren moon in the halo stars, nameless now, forgotten by every archive. We were sent to cleanse an infestation, some new breed of Xenos that multiplied like rot within the tunnels. The fighting lasted weeks. I lost both arms to acid before the final push. They replaced them with Pattern 6 augmetics, forged from the wreckage of our own dropships. When I returned to the line, the enemy's shrieks sounded distant, filtered through my helm's vox, as if I were watching myself from somewhere far away. When the killing was done, I found I could not stop my fingers from twitching, even after the last target fell. The metal hands remembered the rhythm of slaughter better than I did. The years blurred after that, campaign after campaign, each victory paid for with another piece of myself, a lung, an eye, half my skull. When the last of my biological heart failed, they replaced it with a reactor coil. I told the apothecary to keep the old one. He sealed it in a jar of amniotic fluid and placed it in the reliquary. I have not asked if it still beats. Sometimes, in the silence between battles, I hear things. The whisper of gears turning somewhere deep within me, voices layered in static. They speak in fragments of code, fragments of memory. Brother Farron, hold the line. The Emperor watches. Voices of the dead, perhaps, or echoes of my own fractured mind running through corrupted circuits. I cannot tell. There was a time when we believed the war would end, that one last crusade would bring order to the galaxy, and then we could rest. That was 10,000 years ago. Now there is only the endless machine of war, grinding on without purpose. We fight because that is what we were built to do. To stop would be to admit the futility of it all. And that is a sin worse than heresy. Do you know what eternity feels like when measured in battlefields? It is the repetition. The same charge, the same screams, the same prayers before the guns speak. Planets change. Enemies change. Even the Imperium itself twists into new shapes of madness, but the pattern never alters. You begin to wonder if the galaxy is a loop, if we are merely echoes in an endless data stream replaying the same command. Engage. Destroy. Purge. Once, long ago, I fought beside men I called brothers. I can still recall fragments of their voices, though their names are gone. One laughed like thunder when his bolter jammed. Another sang Binharic hymns to calm the machine spirits of his armor. They are all gone now, replaced by silence and the hum of cooling vents. I tell myself that somewhere across the void, other iron hands still fight, still chant the old litanies. But I have not heard a human voice in centuries, only the mechanical choir of my own systems checking for faults that can no longer be repaired. There are times I envy the dreadnoughts. Entombed within sarcophagi, they sleep between wars. They dream, perhaps. I do not sleep. My processors cycle endlessly. My thoughts echo like transmissions in an empty network. When I stand guard over the ruins of another conquered world, I feel the vibration of the planet's core through my boots and wonder if the machine spirit of the world still recognizes what life is. They told us the flesh was weak. They were right, but not in the way they meant. The flesh could feel sorrow, guilt, hope. It could die and be freed. Steel endures, but endurance is a curse. It does not forget. It does not forgive. It simply persists, carrying the weight of every sin it was forged to commit. Sometimes, I think I can still smell the forge fires of Medusa, the scent of oil and burning metal, the shouts of the smiths reciting litanies to appease their engines. Maybe those memories are only data fragments looping through damaged neurons. But I hold on to them because they remind me that I was once something more than a weapon. 10,000 years of war, and still I stand. Not because of courage, nor faith, nor loyalty. I stand because I was built to, and because somewhere in the deep logic of my machine soul, a single line of code remains unbroken. Serve the Emperor. But tell me, what does that mean now? The Imperium I swore to defend has become a tomb that still breathes. The worlds we liberated have turned to dust. The people we protected are myths spoken by priests who do not know the meaning of their own prayers. The Emperor sits upon his throne of gold, a corpse god feeding on the souls of the faithful. And I am his eternal soldier, too stubborn or too broken to die. There are moments in the stillness between campaigns when I wonder if time itself has forgotten me. The galaxy shifts, empires rise and burn to ash, yet I remain, unchanged, unending. I have outlived primarchs and prophets, outlasted rebellions and crusades, but I cannot remember the last time I felt the weight of a heartbeat that was my own. Once, I could feel the tremor of my pulse through the armor's haptic layers. It anchored me to what I was, flesh wrapped in ceramite. Now, only coolant flows through my veins, cold and steady as the void. When I tear the enemy apart, I do not feel triumph or rage, only a faint vibration as hydraulics strain and servos whine. My fury had been reduced to mechanical efficiency. The younger ones, those who still have blood to spill, call me ancient. They speak with reverence, fear, pity. They do not understand that I envy them. They can still die. They can still make mistakes, still dream of glory. I remember that hunger once. I remember kneeling before the forge altar, swearing my oaths. I believed the Emperor was listening. I believed I was part of something infinite and righteous. Faith fades slower than flesh. It lingers like an echo in an empty cathedral. I recite the catechism still, though I do not know if they have meaning anymore. The flesh is weak. The machine endures. The words taste of rust. I have seen the truth the mechanicus dare not speak. Machines decay too. Circuits fail. Spirits go mad. I have watched servitors gnaw through their own tongues in feedback loops, heard titans scream through vox channels as their god engines broke beneath them. If divinity exists in metal, then it is a cruel god, one that feeds on the pain of its children. I have been reforged more times than I can count. Each resurrection steals something else from me. The apothecaries call it preservation. I call it erasure. Memories fade in fragments. First the faces, then the voices, then the names. I keep a record scratched into the inside of my helm. 117 campaigns, 41 crusades, 3,202 confirmed kills. Numbers without meaning. Trophies of a life I no longer claim. I fought beside Primaris once. New breeds of Astartes, sculpted perfection, their flesh uncorrupted by the centuries. They looked at me as if I were a relic. Perhaps I am. My armor bears scars older than their gene line. I told one of them once, "You are what we were meant to be." He did not answer. He could not see that perfection is just another form of death. I fought the Necrons on a dead world whose name I cannot pronounce. They called themselves eternal. I laughed when I saw my reflection in their silvered skulls. Perhaps we are kin. They shed their humanity willingly. I had mine torn from me, one upgrade at a time. When the last of them fell, its eyes still glowed. I crushed the skull beneath my heel and whispered, "You should have stayed asleep." Do you know what silence sounds like after 10,000 years of war? It is not peace. It is absence. It is the hum of cooling armor and the whisper of static ghosts. In that silence, I hear things, fragments of old commands, half-erased orders. Sometimes I hear my own voice from centuries ago, promising things I no longer believe. Victory or death. I have achieved neither. Once, long ago, I stood before Ferrus Manus himself. He was light, and thunder and fury made flesh. When he spoke, the forges shook. He told us that weakness is a lie, that pain is a teacher, that perfection is within reach. I believed him. I would believe him still if I could remember the sound of his voice without the distortion of memory. They say he died at Istvan, that his body was torn apart by treachery. But the Iron Hands do not speak of death. We say he was reforged, spread among us as fragments of machine code and legacy. If that is true, then perhaps he lives on in me. A curse of iron inheritance. I have served under 1,000 commanders since, each convinced their war is the one that will save humanity. I have watched them rise, burn, and be forgotten. Each time I swore anew, each time I buried another piece of myself beneath the weight of obedience. Duty is a chain that tightens with age. You stop feeling it after a few millennia, but it never breaks. I was on Terra once, long after the siege, long after the glory faded into ritual. The throne was a mountain of gold and decay. I stood in the shadow of the Eternity Gate and listened to the priests chant to a corpse that no longer hears them. The air tasted of incense and rot. Billions knelt in worship, their voices blending into one endless plea. I felt nothing, no awe, no faith, only the slow ache of realization. We've built a god of failure and called it salvation. I left Terra without speaking to anyone. No one noticed. No one remembers a single soldier among the countless billions who keep this empire of dust alive. On the voyage back to the front, I stared into the warp. It stared back. The Emperor shields us, they say, but after 10,000 years, even shields wear thin. I saw shapes in the currents, faces twisted by time, laughter that sounded like the grinding of gears. They whispered to me. They said, "You have already died. The only thing left is the machine that refuses to fall." Perhaps they were right. I was deployed to Armageddon during the Third War. The air there was poison, the sky a wound. I walked through fields of ash where orcs and men rotted side by side, indistinguishable beneath the grime. The young Marines fought like zealots, roaring the Emperor's name. I moved among them like a ghost. My armor was cracked, my power source failing, but I endured. I always endure. When the war ended, if such things ever truly end, they tried to decommission me. "Too old," the Muggos said. "Too unstable." They led me into a maintenance hangar, laid me on a slab, and began reciting the rites of shutdown. I waited for oblivion. It never came. My systems refused to comply. The tech priests panicked. One called it a miracle. I call it malfunction. I rose from the slab, tore out the cables, and left. No one followed. I have not returned to my chapter since. I fight where I am needed or where war calls loudest. Mercenary, pilgrim, machine. The designations change, but the purpose never does. I exist to fight, to persist, to bear witness. Do you know what it means to exist beyond purpose? To outlive meaning itself? It is not glory. It is horror. Every world I save turns to dust. Every enemy I destroy is replaced by another. Humanity rots from within, and I, its eternal guardian, can only watch as the infection spreads. Sometimes I dream of silence, true silence. No war, no machine song, no binary prayers. Just the faint memory of wind over iron mountains. I think that is what peace feels like. But peace is not for us, not for the sons of Medusa. And so I march on, through ruined cities and dead stars, through the bones of empires and the ashes of my brothers. My footsteps leave no mark anymore. Even the ground has learned to forget us. They say the Emperor watches. If he does, I wonder what he sees when he looks at me. A warrior, a monster, a remnant of a dream that should have died long ago. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I only ask for an ending. But endings are a mercy denied to the iron hands. There was a time I believed I had reached the end of madness, that the mind, once stripped of humanity, could decay no further. I was wrong. The warp teaches you that there is always another depth to fall. You do not need to step into it willingly. It finds you. It leaks into your dreams, your machines, your very bones. It began with the voices in my armor. At first, I dismissed them as echoes, residual data from old battle recordings. But they grew clearer. They spoke in binary hymns and broken low Gothic, fragments of old comrades I had seen die long ago. One voice, a familiar one, kept repeating a single phrase. The machine remembers. I tore open my armor's core and found nothing. No spirit, no ghost, just corroded circuitry and scar tissue. But when I sealed it again, the whisper returned, softer, as if amused that I had even tried. I fought then on Cadia before it fell. The sky was blood and lightning, and the air burned with warp flame. I saw demons dance through the void, twisting reality into mockery. I killed one with my bare hands, drove my gauntlet through its chest as it screamed my name. How could it know my name? I had not spoken it in millennia. After Cadia broke, I drifted in the warp for 3 centuries, or 3 seconds. It is hard to tell the difference there. My ship had no crew left, only servitors whose brains had liquefied from exposure. I kept the engines alive through prayer and threat. The Geller field flickered, failed, flickered again. I saw things move in the corners of my vision, shapes of light and shadow, faces of brothers long dead. One reached out a hand made of static and flame. "Come home," it said. I almost did. When I finally emerged, I did not recognize the stars. I checked my logs, 312 years lost. No record, no destination. I was adrift in a galaxy that no longer remembered my name. I found refuge on a world of ash and iron storms. The sky never cleared, and the air burned the lungs. I did not need lungs anymore. I built a shrine of broken armor plates and machine parts, and there I sat in silence for 100 years. My thoughts became rust, my prayers static, but even silence dies eventually. A signal reached me, faint, broken, a distress call from a nearby system, human in origin. I followed it not out of duty, but out of curiosity. The signal led to a derelict forge world, long abandoned. Its forges were cold, its cities empty, but the Vox channel still played that message over and over. We endure. We endure. We endure. I walked through the empty manufactoria, past statues of forgotten gods, until I found the source. A single servitor fused into the wall, its body little more than cables and bone. It had been transmitting the same phrase for 10,000 years. Its eyes were gone, its mouth a speaker grill. When I approached, it turned toward me. We endure, it croaked. I looked into that hollow face and saw myself. I ended its suffering with a bolt to the skull. The echo died, and the world fell truly silent. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt envy. The Iron Hands speak of endurance as virtue, but they never tell you the price. To endure is to lose everything, one layer at a time, until only the mechanism remains. I am the mechanism now. I kill when I am told. I sleep when systems fail. I wake when war calls again. The worst part is not the pain. Pain is familiar. The worst part is memory. It clings to you, even when your body is gone. You remember their faces, the ones you failed to save, the ones you killed for orders you no longer recall. You remember the sound of a dying world, the last breaths of a brother as you seal his sarcophagus. You remember it all, and yet you cannot feel it. I remember Kalth. The Ultramarines called it a victory. We called it another grave. The air was poison, the ground split with fire. I lost both legs in that war, replaced them with the cold grace of metal. They told me I was stronger now. I did not feel strong. I felt heavy, as if each new part pulled me deeper into the earth. Years later, I found myself standing in a mirror of polished steel aboard a battle barge. I looked at my reflection and saw no trace of the man who once swore loyalty to Ferrus Manus. Just armor, wires, and the faint outline of a skull. I had become the perfect Iron Hand. Fleshless, emotionless, eternal. And for the first time, I was terrified. I have seen planets burn and stars collapse. I have fought under banners that have changed so many times I no longer recall their colors. But what haunts me most are the moments between wars, when the guns fall silent and there is nothing left but the hum of life support systems and the echo of your own thoughts. That is when you feel the weight of eternity pressing down. The flesh may be weak, but it was also warm. It bled, it hurt, it loved. The machine endures, yes, but endurance without purpose is a prison. I am the proof. I sometimes wonder if the Emperor still dreams. They say he sits upon his throne, neither alive nor dead, his mind stretched across the Imperium. I wonder if he remembers us, the ones still fighting his endless wars, the ghosts that wear his colors. Or are we just impulses now, flickering data in the dying machine of the Imperium? If he could hear me, what would I say? We have done as you commanded. We have fought and bled and burned the galaxy in your name. But the light you lit has become ash. The suns you raised have become monsters, and still, you demand endurance. There are nights, if such things exist in the void, when I imagine laying down my weapon, walking into the warp, letting it consume what remains of me. But then I remember the oath. I remember Ferrus's voice, distant but unbroken. The flesh is weak, and I rise again, always. Perhaps that is my curse. Perhaps that is what it means to serve forever, not to live, not to die, but to exist between. I once thought eternity was a gift. To live long enough to see the Imperium perfected, to carry the Emperor's will across the stars until every world bore his light. I see now that eternity is only another battlefield, one where the enemy is not orc or heretic or demon, but memory. 10,000 years. I have fought for so long that even the concept of before feels like myth. When I close my eyes, I see every war as one unbroken wound, a smear of blood and smoke stretching across the millennia. The faces change, the worlds burn in new colors, but the pain never fades. It only refines. There was a time, many centuries ago, when my body began to reject its augmentations. My organic cells could no longer fuse with the machine grafts. The Mechanicus tech adepts told me the solution was simple: remove the remaining flesh. Purge the weak matter, they said. I agreed. The procedure lasted 3 days. They removed my lungs, heart, stomach, every part that still dared to pulse or feel. When I awoke, I no longer needed to eat or breathe or sleep. They congratulated me. I had become the purest embodiment of the Iron Creed. But as I rose from the slab, I realized I could no longer feel the ground beneath my feet. No weight, no warmth, only motion. That was the first time I understood what it meant to be truly hollow. I wandered the Forge worlds for decades, not as a warrior, but as an observer, watching the adepts kneel before their forges, whispering prayers to machine spirits that never answered. I saw them strip men of flesh, implant steel, and call it salvation. I did not correct them. I only watched and wondered if they knew what awaited them at the end of that path. The silence. I tried to speak to one of them once, a Magos, with copper eyes and a voice like grinding gears. I asked him, "Do you still dream?" He hesitated, then said, "The machine has no need of dreams." I told him that was why it could never truly live. He did not understand. None of them do. It was on that world I began to hear the voice again, deeper this time, more insistent. It came not from my armor or the Vox, but from within the circuits of my own mind. It called itself Ferris. At first I believed it to be corruption, a data ghost, perhaps a demon of the warp trying to wear my Primarch's face. But the more I listened, the more it sounded like him. The same iron certainty, the same conviction that perfection was salvation. He spoke to me in dreams, though I no longer slept. "You have endured well, my son," he said, "but endurance without purpose is decay. Return to Medusa, reforge the legion I obeyed. The journey took centuries. Warp storms, broken star maps, entire sectors lost to chaos. When I reached Medusa, I found it changed. The mountains were still black iron, but the clans had fractured, their forges fighting one another in endless competition. The sons of Ferris had splintered into war bands, each claiming to know the true way. None remembered me. I walked among them, a living relic, and they knelt. They called me the Immortal, a living symbol of the Iron Father's will. They asked for guidance, for doctrine, for truth. And I gave them what I thought Ferris wanted: unity through the machine, purity through rejection of the flesh. For a time, they listened. For a time, Medusa burned with a forge light of purpose again. But soon, they began to fight over interpretation, each claiming to follow the truest form of my words. I watched as they tore each other apart in my name. When the forges fell silent, when the last of them lay broken, I realized my mistake. I had become a god of iron and silence, and like all gods, I had birthed only war. I left Medusa then. I could not bear to see what my presence had done. I traveled to the outer edges of imperial space, to systems so distant that even the Astronomicon was a faint whisper. I fought wherever war still lived, which was everywhere. The galaxy had grown darker. The Imperium was a bloated corpse, feeding on its own myths. The Emperor's light flickered, chaos reigned, and still we fought. not for victory, but out of habit. It was there, in the ruins of a forgotten sector, that I faced something that should not have existed. A reflection of myself. A machine construct, ancient, bearing my markings, my armor, my voice. It called itself Ferris Reborn. It said it had been built from fragments of data salvaged from my campaigns, combined with corrupted Mechanicus code. It believed itself to be me, purified, perfected, free from the weakness of doubt. It told me I had failed Ferris, that I had allowed the Iron Creed to become heresy. We fought. I do not remember how long it lasted. Hours, days, perhaps years. We shattered the ground, melted steel, tore the sky apart with our fury. Each strike was mirrored, every move anticipated. Fighting it was like fighting my own reflection. Relentless, logical, merciless. In the end, I destroyed it. Its last words were not a curse, but a prayer. We endure. As I looked down upon its broken form, I saw my own reflection in its cracked helm. The same empty eyes, the same rusted soul. And I understood. I had not destroyed a false idol. I had murdered the last trace of what I once was. Now I wander again. I do not know what keeps me moving. Habit, perhaps, or inertia. The wars blur together, the stars fade, the names are lost. Sometimes I think I have already died, and this is some machine echo carrying on without me. But then I hear the guns again, the screams, the same endless song of war that has played for 10,000 years. And I realize I am still here, still fighting, still enduring. Because that is what we are. We are the sons of iron. We do not die. We do not rest. We endure. And yet, somewhere deep inside, beneath the wires and steel, a small voice whispers, "For how much longer?" There is no dawn anymore. Not where I am. The stars themselves have dimmed, swallowed by the slow decay of the galaxy. I do not know the name of this world. I no longer care. It is a husk, a corpse of iron and dust, fitting, perhaps, for one such as I. My armor no longer hums. The machine spirit sleeps. Even it has grown weary of my persistence. I have not removed this helm in 6,000 years. I suspect there is little left of me beneath it. Flesh long gone, bone turned to powder, only the armor moving by habit and forgotten commands. I have recorded this log countless times before, always erasing it, always continuing on. But this time, I think it may be the last. For the first time in millennia, I cannot hear the war. The guns are silent. The Vox is empty. There are no orders, no enemies, no brothers. The galaxy has gone quiet. At first, I thought this was victory, but victory is not silence. Victory is the roar of triumph, the cry of the living. This is extinction. I found ruins of a city once claimed by the Imperium. Its spires were reduced to ash, but I could still see the sigils, faded, broken, meaningless. I walked its streets for days, searching for survivors. There were none, only statues of warriors who once looked like me, their names worn away by time. I remember stopping before one statue, an Astartes, kneeling, holding his helm to his chest. Beneath the dust, someone had carved a single word, endure. I laughed. It was a horrible sound, dry, mechanical, like the grinding of rusted gears. I laughed until my vox sputtered static, because that was all we ever knew. Endure, fight, obey, never question why. But what happens when endurance outlives its purpose? When obedience becomes the last thing left? I think I understand now why Ferris never returned. He was spared this. He died believing in something pure, an ideal uncorrupted by time. The rest of us, we lived long enough to see that ideal rot. The Imperium we bled for became a cage. The Emperor became a myth, his worship twisted into madness. I fought for 10,000 years to defend a corpse, and I told myself it mattered, because the alternative, that it was all for nothing, was unthinkable. But now, standing among the bones of a dead world, I find that I can finally think it. Perhaps it was never about victory. Perhaps the Emperor knew we would never win. Perhaps he made us not to save humanity, but to delay its death, to buy a few more centuries of light before the dark consumed it. If that was his plan, then we succeeded. We endured. We delayed the inevitable. And now the task is complete. I kneel before the statue. My armor creaks, dust falls. I place my gauntlet upon the stone and whisper through the static. We did what we could. The wind does not answer. I remove my helm. The seals release with a hiss like a dying breath. The air burns as it touches what remains of my face. I feel the cold for the first time in centuries. It feels pure. I look up at the dead sky, at the faint shimmer of what was once Terra, now only a scar in the void. And I wonder if he still watches. I am Brother Alaric, I say softly. Iron Hands, son of Ferris Manus, veteran of 10,000 years. Last of my kind, a pause, a flicker of static. Then a voice, my own, echoes back from the vox, distorted, ancient, unrecognizable. We endure. I smile, not with joy, but with peace. Then I power down the armor, one system at a time. Hydraulics hiss. The reactor dims, the lights fade. The last sound I hear is the faint hum of my heart's final pulse, mechanical, defiant, before it too falls silent. And for the first time since the galaxy burned, there is silence.